Hi everyone, my name's Jasmine and welcome back to this channel. So today I'm going to be reviewing Chosen Ones by Veronica Roth. But before I start this review, I just want to say we all got expectations and sometimes they go wrong. Yeah, so I had huge expectations for this book because the premise was so interesting, but those expectations were not met. And so now you're going to see why in this review. So starting off with a small summary. On the 10th anniversary of the Dark One's defeat, Sloane and her 4 other co-heroes, better known as the Chosen Ones, realized that the great evil that they killed 10 years ago was never really defeated and that they must save the world again from the Dark One. And so this story is basically the aftermath of almost every superhero movie. What does the hero do or experience after they've killed the great big bad? And that's actually really cool to me, especially since magic was introduced to the modern world. And this book is also divided into 3 parts. So each part deals with a different thing. And I'd actually give each part a different rating, but I'm just going to give the entire book a rating. So I'm going to start with some non-spoiler beginning thoughts for this book. So starting off with this review, I'm just going to say it. This book is so forgettable. As soon as I finished it, I think my memory just blocked out everything about this book that I just can't remember anything about it anymore. There were such interesting parts, but there were more boring parts than interesting that I actually can't remember the interesting parts either anymore, which sucks because I can see that there was a lot of work put into this book. It's actually very phenomenal the amount of work that I can see that was put into this book, so good job to Veronica Roth for that. Moving on, there's so many parts in this book that I didn't want to finish. Especially the first part, the pacing is so slow. It's just so slow. There's so many descriptions about things that I don't really care about. And in the entire first part, it's really confusing because we are getting snippets about what happened 10 years ago. But there was other, as I said, irrelevant descriptions of things that I don't need to know what the whole thing looks like in an entire paragraph. This one thing that I forgot about it the second I turned the page because we don't need to know about it anymore. Veronica Roth spent a lot of time describing things that we didn't need to know. Like, we didn't care about them. We didn't need to know about them. They weren't relevant to the plot. They were just there. We all got expectations, and sometimes they go wrong. But just because this book had a slow pace doesn't mean it's technically bad. There's some people who enjoy slow paces. I just personally really hated the slow pace, and even though I'm saying it's not bad to have a slow pace, there's some people who like it. I just feel like that was a down point in this novel because this slow pace was making me want to put it down. I didn't want to read it, but I went through it because I wanted to finish it. I paid money for it. The book is also in third person, which might have been the reason why it was so boring and so slow paced, because we weren't really in the head of the main character, Sloane. So I personally would have liked to see it in first person, but the third person wasn't actually bad. Now, the world building in this book was phenomenal. Like, it was actually very good. Going into it at the start, I thought it was going to be so much info dumping, so much this and that, but Veronica Roth gives us information through experts, newspapers, interviews, emails, those kind of things. And it was a really unique way of giving us information that was entertaining to read and interesting. Here are some of the excerpts and articles that are at the beginning of the book, and I just think it's really cool how Veronica Roth decided to give information like this. There's more throughout the novel, but I'm just going to show these ones. Veronica Roth was really good at hinting all the things that happened 10 years ago. And it was also really cool to see how our government would deal with magic coming into our world when we're so technology-based and science-based. And so I think that was really cool as well. So now I'm going to go into the section that contains spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, I recommend clicking off this video. But if you don't care, keep listening. So honestly, it was really hard to make this review because once the book ended, I realized I didn't care about any of the characters. I didn't remember anything really. I honestly felt no emotion. I actually sent a picture to my friends expressing how I felt nothing after reading this book, and I didn't really care. I realized I should have wrote notes while reading this book, but you live and you learn. So as I already said, the pacing of this book was pretty slow, but especially the first part, it was so slow. I think we were over 100 pages in and nothing had happened yet. It was all just set up for the rest of the book. And I just wanted to put it down. I didn't want to read anymore, which I think is a negative aspect of this book, as I already stated. Honestly, the only thing interesting about the first part was probably Salome dealing with her PTSD, because I wanted to see how she dealt with that. And the experts explaining how the government dealt with this, what normal people thought about this whole Dark One battle. And honestly, because it was so boring to me, I wish I was reading something else. I actually wish I was reading about the battle that happened 10 years ago when these 5 teenagers fought the Dark One. But then I realized I didn't want to read the entirety of that book, but there were so many things hinted at by Salome or by these news articles that I really just wish I was reading that instead in the first part of the novel. I'm actually going to give you guys an example. Okay, so here it's talking about one of the characters, but it's saying, but the damage sustained from their time as captives of the Dark One had taken the feeling from his fingertips, so he had given up the hobby. Now those hands were trembling. This particular passage is talking about the main character and another character who experienced a huge trauma with the Dark One that they defeated. And since the first part was so boring, whenever Veronica Roth hinted at these kind of things, I wish I was reading that instead. We all got expectations, and sometimes they go wrong. Now moving on to the characters of this book, I'm gonna start with the first 5 chosen ones. So we have Matt. He's the chosen one of the chosen ones. He led them through their battle with the Dark One. He's the leader of the group. He's nice. He's intelligent. All this and that. But I never really saw that in him. So many times it's stated that he's the leader, that he led them through everything, but I never saw that trait come out of him, especially later in the novel when conflict was arising and all that. And maybe he grew out of that because it has been 10 years, people change, but it's kind of shoved in our faces that he's kind and that he's generous and that he's a leader, that he is a leader. And I never really saw that he was a leader, but I did see that he was kind and generous. Then we have Albie, and honestly the only thing I remember about him is that him and Salome, the main character, experienced a huge trauma where they were the Dark One's captives, but that's all I really remember about him. We all got expectations, and sometimes they go wrong. Then we have Ainz. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but I can't really remember anything about her, and she disappears halfway through the novel. She's not in it anymore. Then we have Esther, who I also kind of don't really care about. She's not complex, she's not a 3-dimensional character, and I thought she was going to be annoying in the beginning because she was some social media star and all that, and I thought she was going to be some annoying character, but she actually became really realistic when things went down. And the only thing I can remember about her though is that she was an extrovert and that she's caring, and that's all. I liked her, but I didn't really care about her. We all got expectations, and sometimes they go wrong. And now moving on to our main character, Salome. So Salome has a unique voice. I actually liked following her voice throughout this novel. I do wish it was first person though, so we could see her inner battle more. But I really liked her depressing and angry-ish tone that was in this novel. And I really wanted to see her deal with her PTSD after saving this entire world, having the weight of the world literally on your shoulders. How do you deal with that after everything's gone and you've experienced all these things, but people expect you to be okay and they love you and you're some famous person, but she doesn't want that, which I really think was realistic because she didn't want to save the world, but she was kind of put into it. She's more relatable than any of the other characters, and I wish Veronica Roth made some of the other characters as complex as her, but we all got expectations, and sometimes they go wrong. So Salome and Matt are also in a 10-year relationship, and I actually really liked it because I think Veronica Roth did a really good job at explaining how Salome felt trapped in this relationship because she wasn't in love with Matt anymore, but she still cared about him. And this whole thing happened after Matt proposed to her and they got engaged. But I also like how she dealt with the engagement. So another thing that kind of bugged me was that it's literally said in the synopsis that the chosen one dies. And I was expecting that to happen, waiting for it to happen because the first part was so boring. I was waiting for some action, for something to occur. And the one who dies in a completely different way than I was expecting because the synopsis makes it seem like they're gonna die in a huge way in action. And I don't actually have a problem with how the person died. I'm just gonna say it. It's Albie who died, which I had no connection with. I didn't care about at all. I had no problem with how Albie died, which was by an overdose, but I did have a problem with that he died because I didn't care about him. And after he dies, Salome mentions him quite a lot and how he had this huge impact on her, how he was the only one who understood her because they both went through that traumatic experience. I just wish, since the first part was over 100 pages and that it was such a slow pace and there were so many descriptions and Veronica Roth spent time explaining everything, that I just wish she made Albie a more complex character so that when he did die, I would kind of feel the way Sloane does, that I cared about him. But that might have been just me. There might have been enough setup for some other people to care about him, but for me, I was kind of just like, okay, he died, someone was gonna die, and I don't really care that he died. We all got expectations, and sometimes they go wrong. So moving on, later on in the story, Sloane, Esther, and Matt end up going to a different universe. They're sucked into a different universe by people who need them to defeat the Dark One of their world because their supposed Chosen One died. Now in this universe, once again, the world building is amazing. We're given experts, and we're giving excerpts. So in this universe, the world building is amazing. We're given excerpts, we're given emails, we're given little book descriptions, and I think that was really cool of telling us what's going on in this world. The history was also really well thought out. There's different fashion, there's a lot of different things, because in this world, magic is a well-known thing. Everyone uses magic, and I think Veronica Roth did a really good job at explaining how our world would be different with magic, how people would treat it, and so that was really, really good. So another character in this universe, Mox, we're introduced to him as the Dark One, but later he's actually the Chosen One. I thought he was really cool. I think he actually reminds me of Kylo Ren from Star Wars. I think Veronica Roth maybe was inspired by Kylo Ren, I don't know, but his physical description is like him. He actually has a few tantrums, and Mox actually has such an interesting story. I actually wish we got to see more of it, but it's delivered well through, once again, those like excerpts and emails and his own dialogue when he's talking to Sloane. And he's actually a really huge badass, so I think that was pretty cool. But one thing I didn't like was that Mox and Sloane have a romance. I was sort of expecting it because, I don't know, they were spending so much time together and I saw it coming because he had his shirt off and all this and that at certain times. And they had similar experiences, but I realized that there's a sequel to this book, and I wish Veronica Roth didn't put them together right in this instant because it felt kind of insta-romancy, and I didn't really like it. I wish they just stayed as allies. Another thing that I thought was really well done was that another character, Nero, I don't know if I'm saying it right, I'm gonna say Nero. He's training Sloane, Esther, and Matt on how to use the magic in the new world. But we later find out that he is actually the original Dark One, that they never defeated the Dark One, and I actually wasn't expecting that, so that was pretty cool, and then everything started sort of coming together, and so the novel ends with Sloane killing the Dark One, and then everyone ends up back on Earth, meaning Mox and then the original three, Sloane, Esther, and Matt, and another character who I kind of don't want to mention. But it's also not their world, it's actually a world of all the things Sloane liked. All the things she hated are gone, which I thought was actually really cool. And so basically, I kind of want to know what happens next in the sequel, but I also don't care about any of the characters. I don't remember anything about them. And I feel as though they're just going to stay as these paper cutouts, sort of. They're not going to be really three-dimensional. I barely know anything about Ainz, and I already can tell that she's probably going to be in the sequel. And so since I don't care about these characters, there's a high chance I'm not going to be reading the next book. I might just spoil it for myself because I want to sort of know what happens. I'm going to be giving this book 3.5 stars, even though there were so many times where I was not going to finish it. There was a lot of work put into it, the world building was amazing, and the plot was actually pretty cool. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and maybe even subscribe, and please give me tips on how to do reviews in the future.